Hello, screenwriters, and welcome to Writing for Screens, the screenwriting step-by-step project. Episode 246, session 246. My name is Glenn Gers, and I come to you every Monday through Friday, if I can make it, at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to let you look over my shoulder, share my screen as I write a script. I am doing this in order to demystify the process of writing a script, to try and teach a part of screenwriting that I think is undertaught, which is the process, the day-to-day, line-by-line way that you work through getting your ideas and your abstract thoughts and your feelings and your ambitions into an outline, and get that outline into a rough draft, and that rough draft rewritten into a readable draft. That process is what I want you to start thinking about if you are trying to learn to write, because the problems get solved by the process. I know that sounds crazy, but when you get working on something, if you just learn a good, solid process, it will solve all your problems as you go through it. So therefore, I just wanted to show you some steps that might help. It's not the only way. It's not the best way. It's just the way I figured out for myself in a 25-year career writing for TV and movies, because there was no one to show me how they did it. Everybody was on their own, and I thought on my way out of the business, I would just say, hey, this is what I figured out. Maybe it's helpful to you. Try these techniques, try these tricks and tools, see if they work for you. Every writer is different. There is no right way. Whatever works for you is your best way. Do that. But if it's not working for you, try these things. That's all this is. If you have actual questions that you want to know about what I think about the business of screenwriting, the art of screenwriting, this is where you will find it. This is my channel, Writing for Screens, the first 3 playlists. Screenwriting Essentials, Screenwriting Tools, Skills, and Craft, and the process, being a writer. This is where I have figured out what I think on various steps of the process, things like flashbacks, genre, dramatic action, whatever the topic is. I made it a great big word in the thumbnail, and I gave you a 10-minute summary of what I think is useful. I try to make it as practical as possible so that you can take it and use it as you need. That's the point. You don't have to watch all these things. You don't have to watch them in order. It's just a way to show you the way I work in case that is helpful to you. Hi, Nacho. Hello, Nathan. Hi, Donna. Hi, Roddy. Oh, thank you. Hello, this is Kitschy. Yes, thank God for Film Courage. Where would I be without them? Their interviews with me introduced me to the widest possible audience, and thankfully a whole bunch of you have come here, and that is wonderful for me. So I am very grateful to Film Courage. All right, so let's get to this, because I just have so much to do. What we got here is the pitch document. That is what I've been working on. Ah, yes. And what I've been working on is figuring out what's going to happen in the rest of the series. That's what this pitch document is about. The pitch document is about, if somebody reads your pilot script, that's what I'm writing here just to show you how it's done, because most work is now in series, not in features. And so I thought, hey, let's take a look at how you write a pilot. And when you've written a pilot, people are going to say, well, where does it go? Where do you think the series is going to go? And you have to have thought of that. So this is how I think of it. I go through and I ask myself these questions. I say, what of each of the characters, what is their basic story about? And I do try to use, as Eva says, the 6 questions. I do have a video which is pretty useful, I think, called the 6 Essential Questions. I hate to make it sound like 6 essential questions like, oh, this is the answer to all your problems. But honestly, for me, it has been the answer to all my problems. And those 6 questions are, so that you don't feel like you're being baited and switched, who is it about? What do they want? Why can't they get it? What do they do about that? Why doesn't that work? And how does it end? I explain all these questions in detail, but what I am doing right now is asking these questions about this stuff, about each character. I'm saying, okay, who is it about? Well, it's about the character, like Xena or Dundosky or whatever. The question is, what are they there for? What do they want? What are they trying to do? What is the center of their story? So that I have a sense of like, oh, this person is about their devotion to justice and their tragic demise. Cool. Now, I don't want to have another person who has the same tragic demise. One of the things you try and do is have your stories be different from each other. So that's what I'm doing. So we got somewhat into McLean and Cameron, who are friends in the story somehow. And this is now where I left off is Cameron. And the question is, how does Cameron deal with the fact that she is, she is friends with Xena, and Xena turns out to be evil? No, I've never written a stage play using Final Draft. When I was writing stage plays, I wrote them actually just in plain old word processing. But I'm sure that the Final Draft or the Scrivener, the things that I use, they all have stage play formats, and I'm sure they're good. So the question is, essentially, what does Cameron do, and how does it end? That is always the question. Hello, Mohammed. Hello, Larry. Hello, Kirby. Lots of folks here today. That's great. Very, very glad to see all of you. We are asking questions. I am asking questions. You guys are watching me ask questions. So the oh, thank you, Hunter. Yeah, I didn't. Brothers Keeper was a job. It was a rewrite job that I was offered. The script that I wrote and the film that they made are very far from each other. They did a lot of rewriting on the set when I was not there. I haven't seen it in about 20 years. I should watch it again. I was proud of the work I did. However, I can't say that a lot of that stuff was not mine. A lot of that stuff was stuff that I don't know who wrote it, honestly. I believe that the actor is a director. I don't know who did some of the rewriting. But there are some bits. And that's nice. Yes, it's very important to coordinate your text and your shirt. Okay. So, got the answer to that. All right, so the question is, Cameron is close to Xena. How? What does that mean? So the question is, what does Cameron do when she finds out that Xena is evil? And this is tough because I really have no idea what the plot at this point. I kind of like the idea that Cameron just goes home. That a high school student should not have to be involved in murders. Unlike most of television and movies, I would like to say, if you are a teenager, you're allowed to just go home. If you're a teenager confronted by evil, you are allowed to just go home. McLean tells them this. Okay, this is great. I don't know how that works. But this is it, yeah. when Cameron is confronts Xena's evil. I love that. I am so happy. Okay, so hey Chester Bell, thank you very much. I'm doing all right. Thank you. Very kind. Everyone is for a blatantly bad idea. Why is Xena evil? Why can't Cameron not notice that she's evil? Well, the answer is Xena is evil because she is a cold-hearted, self-centered murderer. And in fact, because she ends up murdering a bunch of people, in essence, a serial killer. Xena is a person who decides to murder George in order to take over George's podcast and solve George's murder and make herself famous. So that is why I consider her evil, because she doesn't have a good reason. It's not like she's, like, oh, I'm trying to, feed my family or something. Xena is just doing it evilly, and there you go. So and why doesn't anybody know that is because Xena's clever and conceals it and makes herself seem like she just wants to solve the crime when actually Xena committed the crime. There we go. Boom. Okay. So I don't know how that's going to happen, but I do know that is the arc of the story. That is okay with me. A blatantly bad idea. Was that? Are you talking about last week? Unless you have a blatantly bad idea and you want to toss it at me, you can go ahead. That challenge remains open. Hi, Trash Compactor. Glad to see you. You're late, but you're not very late. That's okay, Ches. Hi. Uh-oh, you're in trouble. Hi, Chester. Hi, Ches. Kirby's question. Oh, I missed Kirby's question. Okay. If I'm staffed on a show and someone comes up with a blatantly bad idea, everyone is for it. It's a good idea to point out how bad it is. This is actually a very interesting question because it has two parts, which we shall get to. Thank you, Nathan. I missed that question, so good. Sounds like a tough room. Yeah, she's going back to Xena. Yeah, she's okay. So let me just take a moment here to talk about. One thing is what I'm calling the bad idea challenge, because I do not believe there is such a thing as a bad idea, and this is debatable. But if you tell me a terrible idea, I'll see if I can find a way that it could be good. So Kirby, part one. Let's talk about Kirby's question. Part one of Kirby's question was, if you are working in a room, if you're on a staff or working on a project where you are working with other people and somebody comes up with a blatantly bad idea and everyone else says, wow, what a good idea. The question is, should you say, I think that's a blatantly bad idea? Let's talk about that because there's a couple of parts to it. Part one is, as I said, the bad idea, the very problem of, is there such a thing as a bad idea? And is there no way to make it good? I would argue a part of writing, especially screenwriting, is finding ways to make bad things good. So I would say start to think that way. But part two is there, if there's no way to say, we could take that idea and do this with it and maybe take it, make it good. Let's talk about the fact that what you're really asking is dependent on the room and your needs for your situation. For instance, suppose you have written a script by yourself and you show it to a producer or director or executive and they say, "Ooh, I've got a great idea. Let's change your script to do this." And you feel it's a terrible idea. You have to decide, do I want to protect my work or do I want to please this person and get what they have to offer? That's a choice. There's no right or wrong about that. Different times you can do different things. If you say to them, "I don't believe that your changes are a good idea," you probably will not work with that person. If you are in a room and everyone is jumping on a bad idea, first of all, think, what are the consequences of the bad idea? For instance, if it's a bad idea, but it's just going to be one scene, fine. Don't fight. I would say always mention things once. That's the good thing, is that if you have an opinion, it's always worth mentioning it once. In a positive, supportive, collaborative way. If you say, "Oh God, that idea sucks," it's not helpful. Even if you're right, being hostile, aggressive, negative is generally not a good way to collaborate creatively. Creativity is not negative. Creativity is by its nature positive. You are building, you are improving, you are changing for the better. If all you can say is "that sucks," you could say that. Ideally, you would say why. For instance, "That is a bad idea because it contradicts the main idea of the story." That would be possible. If you were going to say it's a bad idea because it's been done before, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Some people like stuff that has been done before. So you have to think about, why do you think it's a bad idea? And you have to be able to make that argument. Because while something may seem obviously bad to you, it seems obviously good to other people because they think it's funny, or they think it's original, or they think it's whatever reason they have for thinking it's cool. You have to respect that they do think that. They're not lying. So just to go head to head, that's bad. That's not helpful. So the answer is, if you can think of a specific reason why the idea is bad, it's worth mentioning once. To say, "Hey, that idea is going to make that character look very weak, and I don't know that character can come back from that." It could be that the showrunner will say, "Hadn't thought of that," because they might not have thought of that. And then they'll say, "Yeah, let's put that on hold for a while." Possible. It's also possible to say, "I don't mind. I think they can look weak once in a while, and then they'll come back from it." Okay, decision made. The thing about a room is there is someone in charge, in theory. There is somebody who makes the decision. And the way a room works is that there is a hierarchy of a couple of people who are most senior, and one of them is the deciding person. If that deciding person is not in the room at the moment, there's usually a second in command who is the deciding person. So the answer always becomes, what does the deciding person, the showrunner, the head writer, the person in charge, gets to make the creative decision? Because this is a choice. There is no right or wrong in creativity. Writing is making choices. And you may not, if you're writing with other people, you may not agree with their choices. So that's what I say, is that if it's a, quote, transparently bad idea, an obviously bad idea, and you can tell them why, and they say, "I have heard you, but I decide that is not that big a deal compared to the advantages of it." And the advantages may just be, "I like it." That is the thing about creativity. Somebody is just going to say, "I like it," or "I don't like it." That is their job. Your job, if you are writing in the room, is to give them your thought. And then if they like it, they like it. And if they don't, they don't. And you just keep doing your job. That's the way that writing in a room goes. It certainly does not behoove you to fight about it. If for some reason you feel like the entire show is going to fall apart and no one sees it, I personally would privately go to the showrunner and say, "Hey, I didn't want to make a thing of this in the room, but I want to ask you, like, are you sure this isn't going to derail the entire program or whatever it is that you're afraid of? Otherwise, you know what? It's just a choice. People make choices all the time. Writing is making choices. You learn to live with that. I am giving you this advice at age 64 because for most of my life, I did not take this advice. I thought my job was to fight for my vision, to provide the highest quality Glenn Gers material possible, to make those choices and to show them why my choices were special. And that lost me unbelievable numbers of jobs. I didn't get many jobs, and then even some of the ones I got fired off of because I would just like, no, what you want from me is my best choice. And if you're making a bad choice, I'm going to debate this with you until you start to cry. Large numbers of executives, producers, and directors, and various agents around Los Angeles will tell you, talking to me about a story is an arduous experience, or was. I am better now. But I have to say my career would have been a lot easier if I had known what I am telling you now, which I learned in the past 10 years, that first 30 years. So that's my advice, Kirby, on that topic. Okay, going briefly back to these comments. Have you seen the interviews made to Psychopath? You mean like, there's a thing called the psychopath test and interviews, but yes, with psychopaths, yes, it is scary. Okay, briefly, you're going to check out Laura's bad idea. A crazy hoarding woman has a bunch of cats, like 30 rats. The police wants to take her house away for hazard risk and her fight to keep her house of cats. Why is that a bad idea? That sounds like a great idea. I mean, I don't even see what's bad about it. You could go lots of different ways. I mean, that could be like a small character comedy about this crazy woman who, and honestly, how crazy, hoarding, yes. 30 cats, not necessarily. That could be heroic. Maybe the whole point is that over time, all the other people learn that this woman with their 30 cats is really a better person than they are, and they band together to help her to keep the 30 cats. And maybe she ends up founding a cat hotel. All I'm saying, and that's just one version. The other is like a Home Alone. Where the woman is fighting off the various people who are trying to take away her home, and she and the cats keep everybody out. I don't know. All I know is that a crazy woman with 30 cats, they want to take her house away, and her fight to keep her house of cats. That sounds great. I don't see that as a bad idea. You have to tell me why the bad idea. Yeah, exactly. For Fnorddoc. Hi, Fnord. Nice to meet you. What is the difference between a bad idea and a problematic idea? I would venture to say there is no such thing as a bad idea. A bad idea is just an idea that has not been looked at in a different way. That there's almost always a way to find something in the story. Will it be a good idea for a particular commercial system of entertainment business to fit their exact current fad? No, then that's bad. If that's your definition of good and bad, this will be bought and made by the people who are currently buying and making things according to their current values. It's quite possible to have something bad. But right now, actually, it's harder because the parameters are quite wide. My bad idea. A high school student is a mathematical prodigy who still wears diapers. I'll tell you the bad thing about that is that it makes people uncomfortable. But for many people, that would be a good idea. The interesting thing about that, I mean, it would have to be a little indie because the diaper wearing is so uncomfortable to most people that it would be hard to make that a commercial hit. However, first the question would be, why still wears diapers? And then the question would be, is that going to change? Or is it going to be something that has to be accepted? Is that going to be, if there's so many things you could do with it. The thing you would have to confront is you are going to be doing a story which is going to make people profoundly uncomfortable. And the question would be, what are you going to do about that? Are you going to really get into the details of why diapers? And the really interesting thing about that is what's uncomfortable. Is it the going to the bathroom part or the psychological immaturity part? Where is the, because somebody could be wearing diapers purely out of the fear that they are going to go to the bathroom uncontrollably. So they wouldn't, they were like, they don't actually go uncontrollably, but they're so afraid that they wear the diapers. Or the question is, why have they not been able to learn this? And it could actually be an inspiring sort of story like The Miracle Worker, where it's like somebody decides to help teach them how to do it. In high school, they learn how to use a toilet. Cool. Is it going to be easy to sell? No. But it's not necessarily a bad idea. That's my take. But I got to say, Ford, nice. That was a challenge. That's a hard one. Hi, Di. Hi, something else is here. Why are rewrites more common during filming? They're not. Rewrites are common all along. Screenwriting is rewriting. You do nothing but rewrite. You are, from the moment you write, from before you think of your story, you are doing rewrites, because people are constantly giving you notes, suggestions. When you say to your manager or your agent, hey, I think I want to do this or that, they will tell you, well, make sure you do this and make sure you don't do that and make sure you do this. Those are notes you have to do rewrites, whatever your plan was. If you show them your outline, they will say, change this, change that, change. You are constantly rewriting. There is never a point, except for a very, very few screenwriters, where they have the power to say no to a rewrite. That's the truth. That's the truth. If you're working for Marvel, okay, it's the truth. If you are a top famous writer, one or two, a handful of famous writers have managed to get contractual power to say, I only make the changes I want to. That's almost nobody. So the answer is, if you are a screenwriter, you are rewriting a lot and often to make it worse. You're welcome, Kirby. I am the dude. I abide. Okay. Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome. Why can rewrites be so irritating for new writers? Because of what I just said. Because it's irritating to be trying to write and have people tell you what to do. That's just irritating. That's just frustrating. It's confusing. You have to get used to that. It's like somebody saying, you have to paint this, but somebody's telling you what to do as you're doing it. It's hard. It is hard to be a screenwriter. I strongly advise you people not to do it. Okay? Think if there's any way that you can either do DIY, where nobody can tell you what to do because there's no money involved, because you're not going to make any money, and you should do it for no money because you're not going to make any money. But you get to do whatever you want. Or write it as a novel, write it as a poem, anything. Okay, so those are that, yeah. Yeah, and I think it sounds like a fun script. I'm not going to answer this one, Hunter, because I've got a lot of other stuff to do. And also that one's kind of hard. They're all challenging. They're all challenging. Hi, Joel. Oh, yeah. It's not like nobody told me. It's not like I didn't spend 30 years in the business butting heads with people and being told, Glenn, that part of your job is to do what you're told. And that was in the heyday of auteur, indie-minded, artsy cinema, the post-70s and through the 90s artsy indie. That was a big part of the language of Hollywood. That language is pretty much gone now. And the language is now, this is a business, this is a collaborative art, and you're expected to collaborate. Okay. Something else is here. He stores, because he's had brain issues that affect his neural. Yes, exactly. See, that's actually really cool. And then maybe the question is sort of like a thing. If he had the choice between a surgery or a drug that would solve the diaper issues but take away the prodigy issues, would it be worth it? And especially as a high school student, that would be freaking brilliant. That's like so powerful because the social pressure is so intense, and the oh yeah, great idea. Or Laura's take, they wear diapers because they're a prodigy at 1. So geez, also interesting. Yeah, maybe like a 2 or 3-year-old, but sure, absolutely. Okay. Thank you, Anshul. Thank you very much. Yes, there's a big difference between I love rewriting, but for myself. There's a big difference between rewriting because someone's telling you to, and rewriting because you are making it better as you see. Yeah, I believe this is life advice in many ways. To recognize, just to close off this rewriting thing, and I'm going to get back to my rewriting, is the important thing to remember is that you are not doing this on a pure level. There is no purity in creativity. There is no pure art. There is no pure absolute right or wrong. So therefore, you are balancing artistic values versus power dynamics. You are like, if you are hired, you are an employee, and your job is to do the best you can with your orders, even if they're bad orders. Obviously not to go to the Nazi level on that, but within screenwriting, yeah, somebody says, write this bad thing. Your job is to write the bad thing as well as you can. That one took me a long time to understand. The weird thing is, it's actually easier. It is easier to say, I'm going to write the best I can on this specific bad order, than to say, I'm going to find a way to make it good, or I'm going to find a way to convince them. Oh, the convincing is the worst plan ever. So, and I think that's true in life. Figure out where the power lies. Figure out what the price is for the choice you want to fight for, because it's very often just not worth it. Try to reserve your do or die, hill I'm going to die on things for things that you own, that you control, that are yours. That's my advice. Hi, Mark Eggins. Do you think we have hit peak streaming in terms of number of providers, or will there be potentially more demand for scripts? There's an assumption in this question that I am not sure I believe in, because more providers in theory would create more demand for scripts, but not really, because here's the deal. It's the streaming provider is like they're the distributors. The streaming provider is the theater, is the channel. And therefore the number of shows is where you get the question of the more shows, the more staff positions. The real question about that is, have we hit peak, what they call peak TV, and others have, how many shows? Like right now, I think there are over 500 shows now, and that's scripted. 500 shows. If everyone has a staff of 5 or 6 people, and some of them are bigger, but some of them are only 5 or 6, that's a lot of jobs. But most streaming shows only work for a few months at a time. So therefore, you don't have a full year's employment on a show. And therefore, you have to go from show to show more often. Whereas back when there were relatively few networks and they ran for 22 weeks the season, they basically it took them all year to make the 22 episodes, 26 episodes. And therefore, trade-off, you are... there are more jobs, but they are shorter jobs. They may not pay as well. It's very complicated. Do I think we have hit peak streaming in terms of number of providers? I think that there will continue to be side players coming and going, but that the number of big providers is consolidating down to 3 or 4. And that's just the way that's going to be. But honestly, at that level, that's corporate business level. It doesn't matter how many streaming providers there are. The question is how many shows there are per provider. And that's really, so if all of a sudden, Netflix said, we only want to have 3 shows, that would change things a lot. But the answer is there will be I believe there will be a tightening. I believe that there are too many shows. Some of the tightening will actually come by having shows be cheaper. In other words, there'll be less money for the same number of shows. Because the streaming people, the providers want to have as many shows as they can, but they don't want to pay as much as they're paying. So they're going to start to pull back on that. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, sometimes you just say, it depends. Do you own the work? That's the biggest question about rewriting. Do you own it? If you have created it independently and not been paid to write it, then you own it, at least until you take the money. So therefore, you have that moment to decide. I think that the value of this is such that the money they will pay me to make the change that I think is terrible is not worth it because it will then suck and never get made. That happens a lot. And sometimes you just say, I appreciate it, but on this one, I am not going to make those changes, and therefore we should not do business. You got to watch out for how many times you do that, because at a certain point, people say, oh yeah, that's that person who writes good stuff, but they won't make any changes, so don't even call them because they're not going to make any changes. We know that. So you want to try and at least learn how to make changes sometimes. Okay. I know this isn't your typical question, but I'm really struggling with this and figured, can government exist without coercion, and what would like to look? Truthfully, this is a question that is outside the scope of writing for screens. So therefore, I would say, while we all may have opinions on government and coercion, this is about screenwriting, so I can't answer it because I don't know. What do I know? Okay. Yeah, cool. Okay, let me get back to writing, that thing I talk about but don't do enough of. Okay, so we got Cameron. We kind of got some of McLean, but we still need. We still don't really know what is going to happen with McLean, but let's move on and see what else we've got. We got Ted. We got Shrimpton. We got Deakins. Yeah, okay. Deakins, Madeline, Norman, they're okay. I know that. So here's the thing. I don't think McLean should die, and I don't think that Cameron should die, but we need people to die because this is a murder. This is a story about a serial killer. So we need people to die. I believe that Ted is going to be wounded, gets wounded, injured, but not dead. I think that would be an interesting change up. Ha ha ha. They don't get killed. Because I like Ted's interesting. Ted, if you don't remember, is the conspiracy nut. The thing about Ted that we should learn to like is there should be something good about. First of all, there should be something good about all characters. There should be something likable or interesting or admirable, even if they are bad. Yes, Trash Compactor. Yes, thank you. That is actually the answer. The answer is get creative. Absolutely. As an artist, your one of your main answers to all questions is, how can I do something in my art to deal with this issue in my life? Okay. Think about it. What is it? The thing I want Ted to be, what quality about Ted is going to be good? So far, he's just a conspiracy nut. The thing about Ted that I kind of like is how oblivious to his fringeness his obliviousness to the fact that he doesn't really understand that he is fringe, that he is an outcast. He doesn't understand he is an outsider. That's interesting. The idea that this guy, he rejects so much of society and is rejected by so much of society, but when it really comes down to it, he's okay with that. I'm going to write that down. He rejects so much of society and is rejected by so much of society, but at the end of the day, he's okay with that. Okay, this is the truth of Ted. Okay, so the thing about this is, and in this season, he discovers that when the season starts, he thinks he is going to be important, influential, mainstream. Okay, this is it. This is good. Okay. Okay. Let me quickly check on things. Hi, Javier. I'm open to changes as long as they help in the development of the character of the story. That is true, but the question is, according to whose definition? For instance, you might think that something helps the development of the characters, and other people will say, oh, that's boring. If those people are running the show, you may find that what you think is good for the character development, they think is boring, and what they think is good for the character development, you think is dopey. Then that's when you run into Kirby's problem. Of American writing that way, they don't care about killing any character. That's relatively new, but it is true. The Sopranos, I think, kind of started that off, and then Walking Dead also did that and opened up that. And then, of course, Game of Thrones really solidified it. But we're talking about in the past 20 years, and really in the past 10 years, has the willingness to kill off central characters become commonplace. Okay. Yeah, I like that he's okay. That's cool. How many scripts should I write a year to practice? Hi, Ben. Nice to meet you. Do you recommend to write a bunch of first drafts and identify them and move on to write more or less complete scripts? Okay, interesting, because those are kind of two separate issues, I think. How many scripts a year? That one is entirely how many can you do? Sometimes depends if you're in working a job or in school or taking care of your family, you may be lucky to get one done a year because you're only working a little bit a day if you are lucky, and most of the time you don't get to write much. So it would be inappropriate of me and foolish to say everybody should write 4 scripts a year. On the other hand, if you are able to churn them out relatively easily, if your schedule allows and you are comfortable doing it, like trying to get a script done in 3 to 6 months is not a bad idea. Although some may take longer, but it's not a bad idea to learn to write that fast if you do care about being professional, because professionals are required to turn things over pretty quickly. I don't know if it is still true, but 8 to 12 weeks was the standard for how long you had to rewrite a script or write a script in a standard Writers Guild contract with a studio 10 years ago. But often on a TV show, you'll be given an outline and said, you have 7 to 10 days to hand in a 60-page script from this outline. Go. You don't have to go into the office those days, or you don't have to go into meetings. But so the answer is depends. I would say that how many scripts a year depends on how many you can comfortably creatively do. You should not be making yourself crazy. You should be do as many as you can. But then the question of, do you recommend you write a bunch of first drafts, identify their problems, and move on, or write a less but complete script? That's an interesting question. Overall, try to finish. Overall, because the process of if you identify the problems in the bunch of first drafts, in theory, try and fix them. See if you can solve the problems. I mean, it's like you have a bunch of kids and one of them is not very good at math. You don't like throw them into the lake. You say, how can I help this kid get better at math? So the answer is, with your scripts, ideally, you would say, well, how can I make this better considering it has a problem? If the problem is fatal, well, what problem is that fatal? What problem can't be solved? And I had a script where I had 4 main characters, sort of 2 pairs, 2 bad guys, 2 good guys. And in the course of the working on it, I realized that while that was very satisfying to me, it was too many characters for the business to comfortably handle. And I had to get rid of, what I did was I got rid of one of the good guys and put one of the bad guys in between. So they were partly a good guy, partly a bad guy, and then they were caught between. So it actually got better. But that was a huge change. It wasn't as huge as it looked at first. When at first it can't get rid of a character. So the answer is, sometimes what's a problem should be fixed and we'll make it better. So that's that. Scary. We can always make it better. Theater of Blood, I have not seen, so thank you for the recommendation. Okay. So then the question is, the question here is, how does he discover he's an outsider? That is a good question. How does he not know? Okay, well, ways that he could not know? He knows he is, but he believes he will be discovered one day. And this, I think, is very relevant. Someday I'm going to prove will prove himself. He will prove himself right, smart, visionary, and the mainstream will celebrate him. Okay. Him. What makes him realize that's not true? Fame. That's it. Oh, this is great. Ted gets a shot on some podcast or TV show to tell the inside story, and he thinks it's his big break, but he gets ridiculed. That's it. That's a great story. I like that. Ridiculed could be spelled better, but sometimes you don't worry about everything. That's great. All right, fame makes you realize that's not true. Okay, that's a great story. Cool. Look, we made a story. I made a story. You watched. I have to be careful about false modesty. What we are here to do is, is demonstrate for you my thing. When he falls in love. Maybe. I don't know if we'll have room for that. Okay. Wow. Well, that's pretty cool. That's nice. Ted's got himself a damn good story. Cameron's got themself a damn good story. You know, I keep saying Cameron, and I keep going back between. I actually don't know Cameron's gender, because Cameron is non-binary, and therefore Cameron's original gender doesn't matter. I keep on clumsily making that mistake. But the fact that I keep making that mistake is actually revealing of how much it doesn't matter. All right. As a writer, wouldn't you also want to direct the film to make sure your vision is realized? Shouldn't this be the writer's ultimate goal? That is an interesting question and a good way to wind down this episode, because, sorry. Let me return to me. There we go. Okay, here's the thing about that. There is a mythology of the writer-director, of the creative auteur, which has developed since the 70s, 60s, I guess, the 1960s, because of it was originally because of the importance of directors. And they said, well, those directors were giving the writers orders. It was really them who were creating. The answer is writing and directing are two very different art forms, crafts, jobs. Very different and very, very difficult. Each one of them is a full-time job. Each one of them is really hard to learn to do. Some people will find themselves able to do both. Many people will not be great at both. Even if you think you want to be, the truth is there are skills. The skills required for directing are interpersonal skills. They're also, you are required to have a certain external toughness, which writers honestly don't need. Writers may get bashed around a fair amount in meetings, but the amount of isolation and interpersonal, like hierarchical work you have to do as a director is very, very demanding, and lots of people can't do it. Even people who are good at other parts of directing. But then the other things about directing is you have to be really good at several arts. You have to be good visually. You have to be good with actors. Ideally, you have to understand storytelling. There's a lot of things to directing that a writer does not need to know at all. If a writer is a good writer, they can, in theory, just be a good writer and hand it off to the other professionals, and they will do it because they did the writing good, and everyone else will do their things on top of it. A director needs other skills. So if you have the talent in all those areas and the willingness to learn all those areas, great. The truth is, most writer-directors are not great writers. And most writer-directors have another writer work with them. Because it's hard. It's really hard to be great at those two things. Because of the way that the adoration of directors built up in the 1960s, 70s, and to a certain extent 80s, this idea about what these people do for a living, what the job is, became completely mythologized. And the truth is, very few, unless you actually work in these fields, you don't know what they are. Most writers don't understand what directors do. Most directors don't understand what writers do. The ones who are working, the ones who are doing great stuff, they very often don't really understand. The ones who are really good at least respect that. They say, I really need a writer. I really need a director, and I want to work with them, and that's so cool when that works out well. actually being able to both write and direct at a high level is very rare. And so the answer is, should it be the writer's goal to be a director? No. The writer's goal should be to be a good writer. The writer-director's goal is that, but you have to try it to see. You have to try it over time. If you don't put the time into learning how to direct, to assume that because you wrote the script, you can go on a set and protect your vision by directing without knowing how to direct is guaranteed to fail. Just foolishness. And what's more, you can see often the writer-directors who get a chance to direct, and they direct protectively. They don't direct creatively. They're not that good creatively as directors. They're just protecting their scripts. And you can see that sometimes. And likewise, you can see a fair number of writer-directors who are great at the directing part, and they're not really good writers. William Friedkin, who's a masterful director sometimes, and he wrote the script for To Live and Die in L.A. I actually really like To Live and Die in L.A., but man, is that a horrible script. It's painful. Yeah, anyway. Let's see. So Fnord, my answer would be, under certain circumstances, you do want to be, yes, the idea of being a writer-director is a magnificent achievement. Just take seriously how hard it is to learn to do these things well. And what often happens is people perform doing them without actually doing them well. You can, and I know people who have, become directors by doing the things that directors appear to do without actually being good at it. And it's unnerving how much people get away with that. Directing is actually really hard. It's a complicated art. And most people don't really know how to do it well. Even a lot of them who are working. And the most painful thing is to see writers who are like, oh, why didn't the director make the actor do this or that? Like writers who disregard what the actors and directors and other artists do because they think it's easy. It's like, well, I could do that. Oh, that's why often writers are not let on the set because they just don't know how to behave. They think they are arrogant about the difficulty of their work and the ease in which everyone should be protecting their script. The script is not there to be protected. The script is there to work with all the other arts. Will Ted become the new killer for season 2? Not impossible. Great. Good. Yeah. It is very difficult to do. Yes. All right. Last question goes to Ches. With outlining, I know that I need to keep asking questions to develop it, but sometimes I struggle to think of a specific scene that will get me there. Any tips? Yeah, there's a good tip for this. Focus on the scene. Solve that scene. Take everything else out, and then literally ask yourself these questions. Because these questions apply to a scene too. Okay? When you write a scene, the scene is going to be about someone. It's not always about the main character. Sometimes a scene is about somebody else. So the first thing you have to say is, whose scene is this? Who's the driving force? Who are we following? Who is making the most central action? And then to think, what is the central action of this scene? And then what do they have to do? Why are they doing it? Why is it difficult? What do they do about that? How does it end? That's what I would say is ask those questions per scene. What's really interesting is that those questions initially are really good for scene work. And the other thing is, if it really comes down to it, and you're writing a scene and you can't quite get it, try it. Just stop and try writing that scene. Just that scene. Just see what happens. Like improvise, figure it out. Say, well, who's going to say what? That's going to do you're going to have to ask those questions. What do they have to say? What do they have to do? How does it end? That's the answer. Okay. Have a great evening to you too. Happy writing. All right, everybody. This was a fun day. I got good answers of questions. I got into a whole lot of good stuff, and I did a lot of stuff on some characters there. Pretty good day. Okay, see you tomorrow. Go write something.